Today, I'm going to do a thinker who 30 years ago I would have thought was terribly important, if not as important as he once was, and I last properly read over 25 years ago. Quite a difficult thinker, so some of this might be a little bit abstract. That thinker is Levi Strauss. He lived to be 100 years old and had the dubious privilege of outliving all those who replaced him. He never changed his mind, though. He never listened to what anyone else said. He was a structuralist. He believed that you could fundamentally think of the human mind in terms of a set of contrasts: man, woman, up, down, individual, public. These contrasts then set the parameters in which thought happened. In this, he is drawing on a much earlier linguistic studies of Saussure. Saussure divided language up into primitive sounds that were contrasted with each other. Any language then has a set of phonemes that create letters, that then create vowels, that then create consonants, that then create words, etc., etc. But at its root, it has a set of contrasts that are fundamentally arbitrary. Any language having a certain number of them, using them to construct then ultimate meaning. What if this is how all meaning happens, Levi Strauss says? What if it is all about a sequence of contrasts? We can reduce then thought or mythology into a set of phonemes for thinking and watch how they combine and recombine these little atoms of meaning. It's interesting. So he thought then that the unconscious could be mathematicalized, as when he was writing, Chomsky was mathematicalizing linguistic studies. It is interesting to note Chomsky hated Levi Strauss, hates him probably to this day, thought his work was of no consequence. And you can see why. Chomsky works on the level of grammar. Levi Strauss only works on the level of phoneme. So why does he matter? This thinker you probably mistook for a variety of genes who lived to be 100 years old but still died 15 years ago. Well, for my mind, Levi Strauss has two ideas that really matter to our day. First of all, it's what he would call les pensées sauvages. Now, that usually gets translated as the savage mind, but really you could probably translate it as thinking in the wild. Thinking in the wild is not like a philosopher. They don't try to, if you're out and about and you suddenly have a problem, you don't resolve it into its fundamental consequences. Most of the time, you just take a pre-existing idea and ram it in and hope for the best. We do it all the time. When we're trying to solve something, we don't think it through. We just think what we already know and apply that to this situation. Using that and drawing on Saussure, Levi Strauss suggests we use metaphor and metonymy. Metaphor you probably understand. Metonymy is part for whole, stepping on the gas. And therefore, we take one problem, we resolve it into a slightly different problem that we already understand and know about, and bingo, we're done. Now, we do it all the time, and we do it to ourselves. It's one of the ways we propagandize ourselves without ever needing other people to do it. Great problems of our state are dissolved then into things we already thought. You discover a paedophilia ring that happens to involve the politicians you like. Bit of changing, bit of turning, suddenly it's the people you don't like. And anything else is just rumour. You've taken what you pre-existed and made it apply to the new circumstance. Alternatively, you're losing your job. The government says they can't do anything. It's something about globalism, something about the world economy. But you don't understand that. But what you do understand is that the people down the road speak a different language to you. Well, they must be responsible. The migrant must matter. They are globalism. They are to be eliminated. It's just thinking in the wild. All great conspiracy theorists do it all the time. They take new ideas, new difficulties, and resolve them into what they were already thinking. Using metaphor, metonymy, translating, using messy thinking, where you can go from something that actually says one thing to something that can say another. and you confuse the two. I spend my life annoying people, pointing that out, I have to say. It doesn't make you popular. I wouldn't necessarily do it. But listen, when you hear people arguing, always say, is that the same argument? Or have you done a little metaphor, a little metonymy, a little jump? Because thinking in the wild does that all the time. We're forever moving from one argument to a slightly different argument, to a slightly different argument, to a slightly different argument, until we claim we solved the problem. I think that matters. I think Levi Strauss has something useful to say about that. That it's a mistake to understand the mind in terms of reason and the logic. It's a bricoleur. It modifies what it does to fit its circumstance, and usually has a certain number of stock ideas that it's going to reckon everything up with. And you just have to live with that. The second, much more complicated idea that really matters for Levi Strauss is that he wants to understand kinship, but particularly mythology, in terms of a sequence of contrasts. He always says that the great formula for understanding myth is A is to B as C is to D, which doesn't really mean very much. It's kind of chord ratios. But what it says is that one contrast is... He'll take a contrast and say that it exists in the same relationship as another contrast. The point about all of this is that you take really difficult issues, really uncomfortable issues, and you resolve them into mythological symbolism. And through that symbolism, you appear to yourself to resolve them. And if you don't resolve them one way, you can do it again and again and again. And so across that patchwork of neo-resolutions of mythologies, you somehow make it feel better. And the mind can do this inexhaustibly. It does it till it's so tired, it must stop. Now, rather than give you Levi Strauss's examples, because I doubt you're interested in jealous potters and the jealousy of heavens, and goat suckers, a bird that is jealous, and the oven bird that makes pots but is open-hearted, I'll give you modern kind of examples. Because I don't think you can understand things like the rapture or TV evangelicism, except in terms of these little moments of mythological thinking. The idea that you're going up into heaven, butt naked, taken by God, is an inherently ludicrous idea. But it's contrasted with giving away all your property. And is contrasted in living in a church in which the poor give money to the wealthy, in the promise of future wealth, which is caught up in a capitalism where the very wealthy often appear on the face of it to be somehow not the best of people, put it mildly, and yet God seems to favour them. So there must always be something happening. There must always be something. They must be either working through God's purpose or doing good, or somehow you can join them and prove that you are better, which is again caught up in a world where you live and you die, where the world will carry on without you, where you are mortal, which is caught up in a world where your very desire to have yet another hamburger will kill you. It's caught up in a world where your own desire, your innocent desire to have yet another top and yet another shirt, is caught up in a global pollution problem that is bringing down the very premise of your civilization. You have then a sequence of contrasts that take you from an idea of a rapture gradually into a deep political, social problem. Of course, the mind goes the other way round. Deep problems are getting translated into slightly less deep problems, into symbolism, into other versions of the same problem, into things that are a bit like it, or things that can stand for it. As what I am, what the world is rethought and rethought and rethought. The problem is with Levi Strauss is that it is all a bit in the end, wave your hands. I was going through the jealous potters arguments yesterday, thinking, am I going to try and explain them? And I thought, well, you're not really, it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't do anything. And I like my philosophy with legs. However, What it does remind us, and I think this is really important, is that when people are thinking mythologically, proving or disproving them, it's not the point. What you have to do is engage in the mythology and gradually move it your way. Because that's in the end the only way you can engage with this type of argument. It's not meant to be logical, or it works on its own logic. And busting a gut and shouting at it, sure as fudge isn't going to help.